Hi everyone, my name is Nils. You get the 3-minute preview. So if you would like to join me, put your fingertips on your shoulders and with your elbows go all the way front, all the way up, all the way back, and all the way down. Twice more. I call this the cheapest massage in town. And now reverse it. All the way back, all the way up to the sky, all the way front. Put one hand on the opposite knee and just give a very gentle spinal twist. Take a nice breath in. And as you breathe out, go back to center. Do the same thing on the other side. Nice breath in. And breathe out if you're physically able. Otherwise, just do whatever might feel good. And take a deep breath in. And back to center. Now, let's do a little bit of a wrist rolls. Massage your knees. Now take your toes and just kind of like go like this with your toes. Take your chin to your chest. Chin to the sky. Back to center, look one way. And neck to the other way. Back to center, take your ear to one shoulder. If you want a deeper stretch without pulling, you can just put your hand in here. Have a really nice stretch on your neck. Back to center. Ear to the opposite. And back to center. Meditation is usually 30 minutes, is that correct? Okay. So it's 10:30, let's start. A little bit of gratitude. We have enough health, enough time, enough resources to spend time here cultivating the mind and the heart. Okay, my name is Nils. I've been a friend of Common Ground for a long time. Along the way, we might have ideas of what meditation is, and some of them are conscious and some of them are not. Like some people think that it should be a different way. And again, there's sometimes like a feeling that it should be something. And bhavana is a word that I love in Pali, it's cultivation. So in Vipassana, when you're sitting, you could actually be talking to yourself and still be considered meditation, right? Spiral bhavana. Or you can practice the jhanas, which is a pre-Buddhist meditation absorption, where you can go into ecstasy, you can go into silence. And sometimes we can be unfocused and not know what we're sitting for. So I'm going to start with some sila bhavana, because it's the beginning of the year, still the first month of the year. And it's to check on our sila, which is our ethical behavior. There are certain traditions, religions around the world who have confession. And in the Buddhist tradition, in the monastic tradition, confession happens in the full moon and in the new moon. And this ritual is to let go of any shame, let go of anything that might be obstructing you. So at the moment, check your conscience, your heart, to see if anything that you've done in the past year something that you can improve on, so that we don't go into a space of shame, but we go into a reflection. And the first precept to respect and cherish life, if you've had the privilege of last year of not killing anyone, there are children soldiers, there are people who had to defend their house, who had to kill someone. Take it into your heart that if you live in a space where that's not part of your reality, where you had the privilege of keeping that precept, take that in. My teacher, who I will be talking about, Ajahn Sumedho, used to say, just keeping the precepts is huge. I come from a country in El Salvador where for a while there was so much killing. And now let's move on to stealing. Do you have enough resources in your life where you don't have to steal from somebody? If you have embezzled a little bit, you can start questioning that and put a stop to it. But bringing that katanyuto bhavana, the cultivation of gratitude, of just, I have enough that I don't have to steal. Just take that into your heart, how beautiful that is. If you've had the privilege of the last year of not using your sexual energy and your sexual behavior in ways that can be harmful to others, to yourself, to celebrate that. People are in a path of healing, or in a path of discovery. But if you've been, for the most part, ethical, to take that in. With intoxicants, the precept is to refrain from those intoxicants that will make you break every other precept. You get so cloudy in your judgment. And so if you're in recovery, if you can have a glass of wine or beer, but keep your wits about you. So whatever you are in the process, if you're working with a precept of not using intoxicants in a way that will harm yourself or others, to be reflective about that. If you think about right speech, I no longer use that. I use right communication. How are you texting? How are you emailing? What is the tone that we use? So if you need to improve on that, to make a mental note. And if you tend to say please and thank you and be kind, to acknowledge that. One of the 30 traditional meditations is actually to reflect on the goodness of your life. One of the definitions of gratitude is noticing what has been received. Being mindful of what has been received. And so with that, I want to invite you to move into a receptive heart space. It sounded a bit woo-woo to me, but what it means is there are people all over the world sending metta out, saying, may everyone be at peace, may everyone be safe, may everyone be healthy. Well, you are part of that everyone. So instead of sending metta out, I want you to receive the loving kindness that people are sending out. What would that be like for you right now? So turn your chest area into a receiving channel, kind of like a satellite dish. Think of everyone that has ever loved you, that wants you to be happy, and receive that. May everyone be at peace. Receive that wish that somebody is sending you. Receive that there were wise ancestors who had to sacrifice things so that the next generations would be happy. Receive the love of friends, of animal companions, right? The love that a pet can give you, the memory of a childhood pet, of a grandmother. Just open your heart and receive that. Maybe you've been lucky, maybe you haven't, but maybe you have received some love in this lifetime. And that all over the planet, somebody's meditating, saying, may everyone be safe. Receive that love. Let it charge you. If it doesn't make sense to you, it's okay. You can just sit here. And as we move into our silent period, acknowledging that you could have been doing everything, other things, but you're here, and that is supportive to people. That energy of receptivity, if you have a meditation object that you're working with, go ahead and start that. You can focus on the sounds, on receiving the moment. You can continue gratitude practice. But what would it be like to just sit here and there's nothing to accomplish? For the next 5 minutes or so, I want you to focus on receptivity. How are you receiving painful sensations, memories, whatever you're receiving, without adding anything else? Just receptivity. If you would like to tune me out, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, I'll give you some suggestions. One, just very gently move your toes in and out. It's a micro movement. A couple of times. Just rest. Let the toes go. Check how your shoulders are doing. Allow them to relax if that's available to you. Check the jaw area. You can micro drop your jaw. Maybe move it side to side a tiny bit. Is there tension in your head? Sometimes micro opening your eyes. So they will look closed to me, but you're allowing sight to be there. Sometimes meditating with your eyes open will release tension for the head. And actually, meditating with eyes open can be very useful for some people. So you can give that a try for a few moments. And now allow the body to be your meditation object. Unless you are in deep jhana states, your body will send you signals. Where is it itchy? Find a place that is painful. I've been practicing this recently, so I'm just sharing practice that I've been doing. Find a place where it might be uncomfortable, or something's falling asleep, and go to that place in your mind, and now travel from it, and see if you can find the spot in your body where that sensation is no longer there. It can be quite tricky, actually. So find the painful knee or the lower back. Probably not every inch of your body is painful. Hopefully it's not. So what is the neighboring spot that doesn't itch, that hasn't fallen asleep, that's not sore? You just have an attitude of curiosity with your body, allowing it to lead you wherever a sensation is strong. So again, it could be a knee, your butt, your neck, and then travel to the spot where that sensation is no longer there. Allow the spine to be in a neutral position. Can you feel where the clothing is touching the skin? All of those sensations. So make the body, not necessarily body scanning, but it's like your right foot is texting you. You go over, oh, that's what it feels like. How do the sensations change? Does it have an emotional tone? I don't want this. Or, oh, this is really nice. So for the next 10 minutes, allow the body to be your meditation object. We have 5 minutes left. Can you move into the internal sensations of your body? Is anything, are there energies? How's your tummy? How are the lungs breathing? So remembering that the heart is pumping, doing so much work. The brain is working. So gratitude for all of these internal things and systems we have. Skeletal, the nervous system. Just taking this last moment to again feel the sensations that are loud, but are there internal sensations and also can be felt. Allowing the body to be your meditation object. Maybe finishing the last few minutes with eyes slightly open, just to experiment to see what that's like. Please feel free to stretch a little bit or move your position. You can stand for a second, whatever you need. Question, people online, are you able to type comments or questions? Can you give me a thumbs up if that's true? Okay. Good morning. Good morning. I have an immense love of common ground. So I've made it a priority to be here this morning. I live in Australia, and I'm here in the Twin Cities for a weekend. So I came from breakfast with some friends, and I'm rushing over to brunch with my family to celebrate 8 birthdays. So I can't stay to say hello for very long. 2 weeks ago, I was in Thailand. It was 96 degrees and humid. Went back to Australia where it was 98 degrees and dry. I was in San Diego 2 days ago, which was 67 degrees, and then I'm here. So my body's feeling a little bit of it's like, what's going on? I think common ground is a place that has a lot of integrity, a lot of generosity, and it's when I left the monastery, I spent most of my 20s as a Buddhist monk, and when I came back to Minnesota, this is where I went to college and high school and had friends, family. This building didn't exist, and it was a really nice place for me to land. And even though, I felt like I had broken up with an entire community, so I was kind of heartbroken, but I knew that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life as a monk. So common ground was a place that helped me during that time. And ever since then, when I lived in San Francisco for 10 years before Australia. So some of you might have met me. And I feel that the people here, they just let me talk and I can do whatever I want, just sort of depending on my mood. And sometimes I'm in a funny mood, sometimes I'm in a serious mood. Like seriously, like one time I came for a funeral and Mark was like, "Want to give a talk tonight?" I'm like, "Okay." So talk about grief, right? And how there's nothing like grief, It just pulls you to the ground, right? You process it. And I was being a tourist in Thailand 2 weeks ago, but I got a chance to go to 2 temples. And so reminiscing and being on the other side as a layperson, it was kind of fun. I was the only non-Thai person in one of these temples. And I knew exactly what to do. They have all of these rituals, and you offer rice, and you do this with water, and I'm like, oh, I know how to do all of this. And I was thinking of how few rituals we have in European-based cultures. I use European-based cultures because it's a pet peeve of mine to divide the planet into East and West. Because I'm from El Salvador, and then our native people, are they East or West? The Aboriginal people in Australia, are they East or West? Are the dancers from Guinea East or West? And so I just don't like it. It's not a big thing, but I'm like, what you're talking about is, Asia has 7 huge, large sections, right? And so is it Istanbul that you're talking about when you're talking about the East? Or is Istanbul the West as well? Anyway. I think ritual can be so useful in many ways. And this thing that we did, that I was telling you about confession, we have therapy in this part of the world where you can go to therapy and talk about shame or something that you're working with. And I was raised Catholic in El Salvador with liberation theology, and Catholicism has been a really positive thing in my life. And I know that for some people it's the complete opposite. Like when I came to Minnesota, they'd be like, "Oh, the mean Irish nuns." And I'm like, what? Like, who are you? Like, what? Like, all the nuns I knew were just kind and funny and wonderful. And I found, when people talk about the mean Catholics, I was like, in Europe, everybody was mean. Like everybody was beating up the kids. It wasn't just the nuns. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, like you would get hit if you were left-handed. Like, it would just hit you. So anyway. But I was thinking, in the Catholic faith, to go to confession, first you reflect on what you've done. You speak it, you say it, so far processing. And then you try to make amends. And then you make a commitment to not do that again. And then the priest would give you a little assignment to do some prayers or to donate something. And of course, in the medieval Europe, it got corrupted. It's like, oh, give me 3 chickens for those sins, and I'll sell you a certificate so you're not in purgatory. It got crazy. But I think confession has a beautiful way of processing whatever is causing us shame or anyway. So I want to share this formula with you, and I want to invite you to repeat it out loud. And it's an invitation. Yeah? It's absolutely no pressure to say it. So when you say it to somebody, it's the confession or the apology or the atonement is, for anything that I have done intentionally or unintentionally by body, speech, or mind, I ask for your forgiveness. Yeah. I find it quite beautiful. And so we'll do it without the you, because we're going to ask the universe for forgiveness and our past. And it's all these things when unintentionally. I remember when I used to have a lot of trouble with plastic. And I'm like, every time I use plastic, I'm hurting the earth. I'm like, sometimes the only water you can get is coming out of a plastic bottle. And so I was like, am I being unethical using this plastic? And it can get crazy. But it's like unintentionally, intentionally, just by living in a society that is wasteful. America prioritizes convenience. Living in Australia, it's interesting to see the differences, right? And so convenience is a big value, in my opinion, in American culture. And so because of that, there's a lot of waste. And what do you do? We're living in a world that is wasteful. Is that a sin? The word sin comes from Greek, and it's an archery term where you miss the mark. And so when you sin, it's like you're trying to live your life and you missed the mark, you were unkind. And so we'll do this, because again, it's the first month of the year. So if you would like to join me, I'll say a little piece and then you can repeat it after me. Okay. For anything I have done, intentionally or unintentionally, by body, speech, or mind, that has caused harm, I ask for forgiveness. And for all the things that we have failed to do. Buddhism presents these teachings in a tripod that I have always found very elegant. Right? You have sila, your behavior. So sila, samadhi, panya. And then you have the meditation aspect. And then you have the wisdom aspect. And after Thailand, I went and stayed on retreat for a week with these Catholic monks, Cistercians. They're strict. They start chanting at 4 a.m, and they do 6 meetings a day. Gorgeous chanting. It's beautiful. It's not exactly Gregorian, but kind of like And I was thinking, they kept talking about the Holy Spirit. I was like, what is this Holy Spirit? I mean, it's something I haven't connected to. But I was like, does the Holy Spirit exist in Buddhism? Like, how can something exist in one tradition and not the other? And then Buddha nature in the Mahayana tradition, does that exist in the Catholic? Like, what is all this? Shakti, this energy that they talk about in India. And so I was thinking, there are the religions and the traditions, and then there's ultimate reality. And I once know about this debate the Dalai Lama had with a Theravadan monk, early Buddhist monk. And they were talking about, the Dalai Lama was like, no, there's more than one ultimate reality. And the early Buddhist was like, no, there's only one. And I was like, more than one ultimate reality. So I want to talk a little bit about my teacher, Ajahn Sumedho, who talks about ultimate reality. By the way, do children still come at the end of the? No? Okay. So I have until 11:45, is that correct? Thank you. Just checking. He turned 90 this year. And so there was a big meeting of monks from around the world for this occasion. And then, like Ajahn Suchito is somebody who's been known in the retreat scene. And he was talking about Ajahn Sumedho as his teacher and what that meant. And because the whole guru thing in European-based culture countries became kind of crazy in the 70s, the 80s, where gurus were unethical and all this stuff. Sometimes the relationship of the teacher and all that has been kind of disappearing. And there's some really good things about that. But it's also interesting to have someone that can kind of guide you. And Ajahn Sumedho, one of the two things that I strongly appreciated about him is that one, he uses the Four Noble Truths as one of his main point references to live his life. And I do the same thing, so I was really happy. Like the first discourse of the Buddha has been really important in my life because I find it almost like a manual on how to live one's life. And so Ajahn Sumedho has reflected on the Four Noble Truths a lot. Just a review, the Four Noble Truths is something presented in the format of Ayurvedic medicine. So you have a disease, and then you have cause of the disease, and you have the prognosis, or you have the result, the cure, and then you have the remedy. Yeah. And so the First Noble Truth is the most common, most basic, most mundane thing, and is that everybody experiences stuff that's difficult. Right? Doesn't matter if you're Donald Trump or Lady Gaga or the King of England, you will have dukkha. It's just the way it is. There's nothing glamorous about it. It's life. Second Noble Truth is the most complicated of the four, I think, in some ways, which is the cause. Paticca Samuppada is the 12 links of how attachment happens. And that I'm interested in religions. I haven't found that in other religions. And it's academically very controversial of what Paticca Samuppada means. But it's basically, there's this grasping. A mistranslation is that desire is the cause, and that's not true. Desire is natural. It's attachment of not wanting the present moment to be what it's not. It's like the attachment to your desire, that's the thing. And then it gets very complicated if you want to get very academic about it, how they explain it. Then the gospel of Buddhism is like there is an end to this, which in a individualistic society comes to like, I will end all my suffering. And you go into emotional stuff. You go into psychology, or you go into a materialism. Just Nirodha is many times described as a coolness, which is the same as Nibbana, actually. It's like this nirvana in Sanskrit. And then you have the Noble Eightfold Path, which is divided into 3 sections, where again, you have this wisdom part, you have the action part, and then you have the meditation part. Yeah? Like they will talk about right livelihood. And what right livelihood is, don't do this, is how it's presented. So if you're a business person, don't cheat, okay? Don't deal with slavery. Don't treat animals this way. Again, right speech, which I no longer translate as that because we have texting, and so I just talk about right communication. And so you have the first two is right view and right intention. And out of the 8, I was fascinated by right intention. It's like, how do I know my intention at all times? How does this happen? Right? But so I find it fascinating. Right effort, which is, if you're doing something good, keep doing it. If you're doing something that's bad, stop it. If you're not doing something yet good, start it. I'm like, okay. So like, they're very useful. And then samasati, which now has become so mainstream, that mindfulness now is everywhere. Armies are doing mindfulness so that they can shoot people more mindfully. And so that's why Zamma Samadhi, Samma Sati, the correct, the wise mindfulness. I met a guy who's a consultant of mindfulness. He goes to call centers and to things like that, and he goes to the companies and say, I will teach your employees to be more mindful so they can be more productive. And this will be good for your cash flow. So that's what mindfulness is now in the world, right? It's become a thing in the last 20 years. And yet, when you look deeply, deeply into samasati, what it means to just be, and even being in the present moment is a weird concept. What's the present? In European-based cultures, it's like there's this tiny little slice between the future and the past. And you're supposed to be right there. And some neurologists say that actually the present moment is about 3 seconds. I was like, what? Or that there is no present moment. That what your brain is actually perceiving is not even the present. And the last part of the Noble Eightfold Path is Samma Samadhi, which is something that it is found in a lot of religions. Saint Teresa of Avila, who's becoming more popular again, she used to do the jhanas, but she explains it in a Catholic mystical way. The Hindus have been doing the jhanas. I mean, the Buddha talks about the jhanas when he was 12. He sat under a Bodhi tree. And these are the meditative absorptions. And in Europe, in America, North America, people didn't want to talk about the jhanas. One, because they're rare, so you can't teach what you don't have, right? Second is because people will be like, oh, you'll get attached to them. I mean, now think about this. If you have the history of humanity, how often did people listen to music? Even 100 years ago. How many people could read? It's just like the impingement that we had as a species. It was rare to have so much information, right? So now we live in a society where, how many movies did people watch in the 1940s when movies were around, right? Now, how many Netflix movies does an American watch in 1 week or 1 month? So the jhanas is a meditative absorption where your senses are resting. And some people are like, I want to do the jhanas. I'm like, you're living in a world where you're texting, you're listening to music. Like, as a species, that's rare. I'm a high school teacher, and I say to my students, we ran an experiment with your brains. With this, you've never seen the world without the internet, right? The level of anxiety and depression in my students, like schools don't know what to do. Right? Or people in their 20s now too, and so talking about Ajahn Sumedho again, this teacher of mine, saying these Four Noble Truths can be a nice touch point, a nice thing that gives you context. Like some people say, oh yeah, the middle way. I can be the middle way. I'm like, the middle in India meant that you were not torturing your body or you were not just living for pleasure. And so to assess ourselves, to say, actually, most of my life is about distraction. And I live my life, like sometimes, I'm folding my socks and I want to watch Netflix. I'm like, it's okay. Like, you just live your life, you wake up and then you make decisions. And something that I've done is try to figure out how to practice every single day. And it doesn't mean like, sitting in meditation. And so this teacher who's 90 used to talk about that as well. It's like, what is mindfulness? And there's a little bit in the Nibbana Sutta. Sutta is a scripture that says there is an unborn, an uncreated, and unformed. If there weren't an unborn, an uncreated, and unformed, then escape from it wouldn't be possible. And this is the difference between using a tradition or religion to make yourself better. I'll do mindfulness so I can have a better marriage. Yeah, but maybe what you need is couples therapy, right? And couples therapy is what in Buddhism is called skillful means. Whatever is a skillful mean, you use it. But this unborn, uncreated, the samasati, where Catholics would talk about grace, or when you're empty, then God, or Sophia, fills you. Sophia is the feminine aspect of God. And what is ultimate reality? How can we be in touch with that? And it's about being curious. It's not about an answer. So Buddha comes as a teacher. He talks about this. And mindfulness, or it's not necessarily an experience. It's like, oh, this is the present moment. It's transcendent. And so as I live my life, it seems like I'm juggling these things of, there's ultimate reality, there's religious philosophies, and then there's my daily life. And people with privilege, like I'm a person with privilege, we try to pick and choose. I'll just do this, I'll do this. And so with early Buddhism, I've noticed, like, I love cosmology in this tradition because the gods and the angels and the demons are parallel to society and to our states of mind. But many times people are like, oh no, those are the religions, they're superstition. They believe in angels. I'm like, Buddhism also talks about angels. And I've talked to people that say, oh no, the reason why I like Buddhism is because you don't have to deal about all that religious stuff. And things like ritual. When I was a student at the University of Minnesota, I went to India for the first time. And I would notice people that would have their shrine. And the first thing you did after you went to the toilet and washed your hands or take a bath was to pray to the gods, little gods. But I thought, this is so interesting, is because it doesn't matter how you woke up. If you woke up with anxiety or happiness, you had this little ritual where you could go and spend time with the gods. And how, we don't have that a lot in our society. And there's little shrines all over India, where you could go. It's like, oh, there's Parvati, the goddess. Oh, Ganesha is so popular, the elephant head god. Or the shrines of the Virgin Mary. All these reminders of stop, there's something that's transcendent, that symbolizes something else. And Ajahn Sumedho, he was a little bit controversial at some points because he would, people were like, oh, you're doing spiritual bypass to talk about the transcendent. or when, this is a tradition that's patriarchal. Early Buddhism does not treat women in the same way, or non-males. And that's one of the reasons I always spoke about this. It's like, if I stayed as a monk, I would have to teach younger monks this stuff, where nuns don't have the same rights. Things like this, I find problematic. And so how do we take a tradition, honor it, be challenged by it, use it wisely? Those are very interesting questions to me. And for example, sexuality, I gave a talk, like I told you, Common Ground, they let me do everything. I did a talk on sex. Or sex, food, and money. Those three things, Because people can have so many issues around food, around sex, around money. So if you're sex positive, this is not a tradition that is sex positive. So then how do you take that in and say, the precept is about having integrity with your sexuality. So if you're in a consensual, non-monogamous setup, it's not saying you have to be monogamous. India had these contexts where sometimes it was described, don't go after a girl that has already been promised. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, it's arranged marriage. And so it'd be unethical to go and try to get a girl that has already, like in the context of today, that doesn't make any sense. But it's, like masturbation is not something that monks can do. Well, what's that about? And I would study this. It's like, the Taoists would say, well, you have to use the energy, and semen is powerful, and you should say, like, there's all these things around it. But then at the end of the day, it's like, how do I deal with my sexuality? How am I honest with it? How do I difference between a psychological aspect and a spiritual aspect about all of these things? I know people that every time before they eat, they kind of meditate. And I've tried it. I'm like, this doesn't work. And I eat quite fast. And there's some people that say that to eat mindfully, you should be slow. I'm like, no. This comes from Ajahn Viradhammo, who used to say, mindfulness doesn't mean slow. Think of athletes, he used to say. Not every athlete is going to be like, I'm playing football. It's like, no. And what is mindfulness? Again, like, is it not doing other things? Like, is it just one thing? So all of you are not at home practicing by yourself, so I think it's a gift to be around people. So instead of you asking questions right now, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to meet someone next to you and ask their names, maybe gender pronouns. And maybe if you see them again, you can say hello. I think spiritual, it's rare, like you don't go to a bar and you'll be like, so how's your mindfulness practice? It's rare. To be at work and be like, so ethically and spiritually, how's your life? Like, it just doesn't work, right? And so I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and people that are at home, if you can type your reflections, because I don't know if I can break you into groups or what's going on with this. What I want you to do for the next 3 minutes, so about 1.5 minutes, is there a question that has come up after you've listened to me for this bit? Is there something that you disagree with me strongly, and it's just like, I wish I could say that, say it to somebody next to you? Or you can also say, like, in my life, in practice, this is what has been useful to me. So just spend 3 minutes with someone next to you. Sort of like, this is what's coming up for me after listening to this guy. And again, I'm a high school teacher, and I don't like to shout, say, okay, we're done. So I do the quiet dingo in Australia. We used to do a coyote. So can everybody try this? This is the quiet coyote. So when you see me do this, do it, and then people will see it, and then you quiet down, and got it? So spend 3 minutes, introduce yourself, and just talk about any questions, anything that has come up as you've listened to me. Go, 3 minutes. 3-minute timer. See, you're such good students. So worried. Okay. I want you to think about, is there something that you heard that would be good for the whole group to hear? Or is there a question that you heard that would be good to ask? I try to limit my responses to about 2 minutes. Sometimes somebody will ask a question, the response is like 10 minutes. It's like, okay. Anyway, is there something that you heard? Is there a microphone that goes around, or it's been a while since? Okay. So yeah, raise your hand if you think that there might be something. Go ahead. We have
yeah, you talked about, you spoke about being raised Catholic, and I was also raised Catholic and then drifted away from that religion. And I think maybe many of us can relate to drifting away from another religion and finding this practice. And I'm curious about your thoughts on why that is. Is it just maybe a sense of like the dogma not relating to it, or just a sense of overall restlessness, or what do you think that's about?
Can people online hear that well? Can you give me a, okay, beautiful. Reasons why people go to different religions. Let me start by telling you a little bit about religious refugees. So for example, when the African American community decided to join Islam because they found Christianity to be repressive, or that so-called untouchables in India became Buddhist or Christian, because Christians would be like, oh no, you're not an untouchable, you're a child of God. Dr. Ambedkar, who was considered an untouchable, he was one of the main co-writers of the Indian Constitution, and you will find statues of him. So if you've been rejected and oppressed in a religion, it's like, bye, there's these other people that are, like Mormons can be so beautifully community-oriented, and yet there's this side of them that is really kind of like black and white, right? And so my husband was raised Mormon and has very, very bad memories around it. And the other one, again, like early Buddhism is presented in the United States in a very specific way. There is a Cambodian temple here in Minnesota, Farmington, I think. And how Cambodians relate to early Buddhism is very difficult. I've tried actually at different points in my life, like, there should be some communication between this Cambodian temple and common ground. Because, maybe white people can go and like, oh, that's what devotion looks like. Like there's this beauty around it and traditions. And then there's these young Cambodians, like there's so much ritual and stuff, we don't even know about the philosophy, right? So like in this kind of environment, you feel like, oh, my intelligence is not being insulted because it can be quite a sophisticated teaching. And yet you go to Sri Lanka and they'll just talk about the Jataka tales. And they will teach Buddhism by showing all the past lives of the Buddha. Now, can you imagine if at Common Ground, all of the teachings were about the past lives of the Buddha? When the Buddha was a deer, this happened. And honestly, like that's a children's book, right? Like it would turn people off. And so if religion is, Catholicism is so vast. First of all, there's 16 kinds of Catholic churches. This is the Roman Catholic Church that I went into. But mystic Catholicism is so gorgeous and beautiful and all that, but people don't know about it, or the social justice aspects of Catholicism. But if people will see, there's the sexual abuse, there's the oppression, there's all of that side as well. And if that's your experience, then why would you stay there? But I had thought, it's like, why are people born in a specific religion and not others? It's an interesting question too, like what can Methodists teach me? What's that about? So I think that people leave many times because it no longer speaks to you. It's interesting, like in Europe, people have left religion as a whole, and it's a very atheist continent. So does that answer your question? A little bit? Yeah, if you're not getting something out of it, you can go. And like with me, I still find Hinduism, Catholicism, and Buddhism as skillful means. Like I still pray the rosary because the mala meditation, in Buddhism you have 108 and you repeat a mantra. And my grandmother used to shut the door and have her friends, and then we'd pray the rosary, and we came out, they were glowing and repeating the system. So, when I come to Minneapolis, if I have time, I go to the Basilica by the Walker Arts Center. This is a recommendation if you haven't done. You can go in, you take a right, and there's an image that these nuns donated to the church of the Virgin Mary holding her hands in Anjali Mudra with these roses in her head. And it's like such peaceful. So just go visit her, so have connection with her. So, yeah. Anything else from someone else? Anything that you heard that might be good for us to hear? Questions? And it's okay if there aren't. I can keep on talking.
I have a question on Zoom.
Practice.
Question. Can you say a little bit more about when you were practicing, you said that if a part like a foot, like my foot falls asleep, right? And you were saying that you bring your attention to another part of your body that's not asleep. Can you say that again? Because I've been really struggling with being able to not move.
Yeah. First of all, when I'm meditating at home, I move. So first of all, you have full permission to move if you need a little bit of a break. Or you can break your meditation into 10-minute segments, 5-minute segments. Now, something I've been experimenting with is like, let's say my elbow is hurting. Then it's almost like I painted red, and next to it is orange, and then it's yellow. Like, at what point, or if the knee is hurting, at what point does it not hurt? It's not easy. Yeah, like the distance from it. Like if if this is falling asleep, I'm curious. I'm like, where am I feeling it? Like, where does it not feel painful? Because one of the reasons why people don't meditate is because it can be uncomfortable. Yeah. And for years, I remember, like my right foot used to fall asleep, and I would research, like, how do I not have, and people would be like, oh, do this exercise, do this yoga thing. And what I found, actually, that sometimes when the energies are moving, actually, it would kind of disappear. But also, what was interesting is, at what point am I not craving just comfort? Like, that was really interesting to me. Like, I want my meditation to be peaceful and comfortable. And so, so that's how I've been looking at the body as information. And also thinking, like, why, when I'm walking around, why doesn't it hurt? And then I sit, and then my back feels like it's in pain. It's about being patient. It's 11:42. My friend Carlos is picking me up. We're going to go to the all-you-can-eat buffet at Boca Chica in St. Paul. If you have not this, it's only $20. It's really yummy. Well, and also in Australia, they don't have a lot of good Mexican food overall. It's getting better, and so it's a bit of a treat. It's always such a pleasure for me to be here. I just feel like there's a sense of home, and I have a connection to Minneapolis that I like. So, and Mark Nunberg, the teacher here, is giving me these things. Like, anytime you're here, just stop by. I'm like, okay. So I'll continue to do that. And I like to finish my sessions many times with what I'm about to tell you. And it's a good reminder. And that's, that every time that you work towards your happiness, you're honoring everyone that has ever loved you. Yeah? People who have loved you want you to be happy. And the good ancestors sacrificed stuff. You think about immigrants. That moment when you leave your homeland, you'll never see any of your family or friends again, so that your kids can have a good life. We are those kids. We are those kids. So when we work towards our happiness, you make people that care about you, you make them happy. And you give hope to the young ones. Oh, he's happy. Maybe I can be happy too, right? So it's important. It's important to continue to practice. And wisdom is not something that you can order on the internet. Sort of it arrives. So you practice and get yourself out of it. Like enlightenment, maybe it'll come. You can be very competitive and linear if you want. But this thing of receptive is something that I've been working with. You receive, you do your stuff, keep your ethical stuff, you live your life. And happiness is not about pleasant moments or being always joyful. It's perspective, it's gratitude, it's all of these things. And I do feel honored and happy to be here. So Thank you for coming along in a cold day. I have to rush off, so thank you for being here.
I have a few quick announcements. Thanks.
I do have to run, so if there's announcements.
That's okay. Thanks, Nils. Is that how you pronounce your first name?
Yes.
Nils, thank you for coming. I'm Ryan. I'm one of the program hosts. I just have a few announcements.